What's up, adventurers? This is Motocamp Adventure, and today I'll be talking about the differences between bicycling and motorcycling. So today I'm in the state forest of Cockaponsit. Behind me I have my Cannondale Trail SL2 29er, which is a great bike. I love it. I just put some Mavic Crossride wheel set on it, and so far they're treating me pretty good. So what I like to say is that I've been a cyclist for a few years now, and I just got a motorcycle. So doing the MSF course was a little odd experience because it was going from, like, say, a really light bike to a very big, heavy, well, not even that heavy. It was like a 250, sorry. It was a Suzuki TU 250, and that thing wasn't that heavy, really, when you compare it to other motorcycles. Now, differences in handling, you probably won't notice immediately at speeds on a motorcycle versus a bike. You know, if you're going down a hill on a bike and you get to speeds up to like 45 miles per hour, which you absolutely can do on a road bike, you know, that versus a motorcycle probably isn't too different, other than the fact that you just have a smaller contact patch on your tires, which I'll touch on later. But I would say mostly through the trails. If you were to, say, do some dirt biking and then switch to even just a mountain bike, differences would be pretty drastic, especially if you were to go from a dual sport bike, which is something like I have, to a mountain bike. Difference is going to be, I mean, you're just going to be completely different as far as handling characteristics, and you're going to be going a lot slower through the trails with a dual sport bike. Now, I mentioned contact patches. Contact patch is how much of the tire actually hits the ground or pavement, whatever you're on, and gives you that traction. Now, contact patches are much bigger on a motorcycle. Obviously, they have much bigger tires, much wider, and they're made to be more, you know, on the sides of the tires as well when you're cornering. Whereas, say, like a road bike, which I'll roll in a picture of that, or actually footage of that, you can see the road bike I have, which is a Scott Speed 340, great bike, by the way. The contact patch is about probably the size of your of one pinky. You know what I mean? If you were to take both contact patches of each tire and put those together, probably the size of your pinky. The difference between that versus a motorcycle, maybe proportionally they're kind of similar. So basically what I'm trying to say is, while the contact patches are different, there's a similar idea behind traction, especially in wet leaves or even just dry leaves too. I can take this mountain bike and literally just swing the back end around on dry leaves right now in the fall. If I'm going around a corner or whatever, especially in wet leaves, like I mean, if you're on a road bike, bicycle, and you go down around a corner, you know, you're going downhill, taking a curve, if you're not careful, you can easily hit one of those wet leaves, lose traction, and then gain traction. And I guess you could say it's almost like a high side on a motorcycle if you do that. Now, obviously, the tire pressures make a big difference in traction, and that's something you'll learn through bicycling. So if you were a cycling enthusiast and then you wanted to go into motorcycling, you have a pretty good idea probably of the different tire pressures you need for different types of traction. Obviously, lower tire pressures are going to give you better traction in the trails. Also, with sand, a bicycle handles actually kind of similar in sand with motorcycling. Now, I haven't taken my motorcycle in the sand yet, but just watching other videos and seeing other people's experiences in the sand, I've learned that just like on a bicycle, you kind of want to unweight the front wheel and kind of keep weight on the rear wheel, and that way your front wheel doesn't kind of dig into the sand and kind of drag along, but it's also a lot harder to turn, just like on a bicycle. Alright, so procedures around a curve on a motorcycle are a little different from a bicycle. On a motorcycle, you're riding around a curve and keeping a steady throttle, or even giving it more throttle throughout the curve. And what that does is keep the bike stable. On a bicycle, say a road bike, on the road, if you're going downhill and you're taking a turn or whatever, obviously you don't have a throttle. And you're more concerned about just keeping weight on the rear tire to make sure it doesn't slide out on you, basically. So there is a lot of difference in that. I noticed that, and especially with counter steering. Now, if you don't know what counter steering is, I might do a video on it later. There's plenty of videos on YouTube already. But counter steering is when you're at a certain speed with a motorcycle, instead of just turning the handlebars the way you want to go, so you want to go right and you just turn the handlebars this way, that's not actually true with a motorcycle. When you're going about maybe 20, I don't know, you actually are pushing on, so you want to go right, you're actually pushing on the right handlebar a little bit, and what's that doing is it's kind of putting you into a lean to go that way. So with motorcycling, there's a lot more leaning, I think, just because you're going at higher speeds. Someone's got a bike. So one major difference between biking and motorcycling is that your controls are a lot different. On a motorcycle, you have your clutch lever here, and this is your front brake. Now, obviously, you're looking at it opposite of how you would ride this bike. So it's a little different, especially if you have plenty of years on a bicycle, switching to a motorcycle. During the MSF course, I mean, I didn't have too much trouble with it, but definitely the idea that this isn't your front brake anymore was kind of a little weird. Now, it's still nice that the clutch lever, you're still going to pull that in when you're stopping, or shifting down, obviously, but basically when you're slowing down, you're going to be pulling in the clutch regardless. So it's not that big of a deal, but you just got to make sure that you're not grabbing onto this, panicking, if that's what you've been used to. You know, you're not grabbing onto this and panicking and then being like, oh crap, no, it's just going just as fast as it was before, and there's not even engine braking, so you might be even going faster and gliding into whatever you're trying to stop for. With this being the front brake on the motorcycle and the rear brake on this bike, obviously, it's not that big of a deal because you're going to be, I mean, most people who bicycle, they use both brakes, and they use more front brake than rear brake. And that's very true with motorcycling as well. You want to use about 70% front brake because you're going to have, when you're slowing down, your body weight's going to be transferring onto the front wheel more so than the rear, and you're going to have a lot more traction with the front wheel. So obviously that's why you can brake faster with using the front brake along with the rear brake. Now the rear brake on a motorcycle is down by your right foot, and then it's like a lever, and that's one thing that I've had a lot of trouble getting used to because I'm always used to just pedaling with my feet. With the brake on the right side, you know, with your foot, you don't really, when you've been biking all the time, it's really weird to actually be able to use that. And I'm always just using my front brake and my clutch lever all the time in the motorcycle. But basically, I mean, that's one major difference, having that clutch lever here, and this is your front brake on the motorcycle. So one thing you just saw me doing there was using my knees to balance. You really can't do that on a motorcycle. I noticed this a lot at low speeds, and during the MSF course, I was definitely using my knees a lot to trying to like balance the bike at lower speeds and even around corners and stuff. It was really weird, and my instructors were like, "What are you doing with your knees?" And I'm like, "Oh, I just do it when I bike all the time. It's really weird." But yeah, you definitely can't really use it on a motorcycle, and really your knees should be clutching. Really, your knees should be against your gas tank or your false gas tank, whatever you have, obviously. But whatever's there, your knees are going to be against it, and that's kind of how you stay on the bike. Now, at low speeds with a motorcycle, you are countering your weight. It's called counterweighting. You are countering your weight opposite of the direction you're moving or the direction you want to go. So you aren't leaning with the bike, but you're actually keeping your weight kind of straight up or even a little to the side, and you're even putting your foot on that foot peg and putting weight on that foot peg if you're going to go right, or opposite if you're going to go left, obviously. So that's actually pretty helpful, especially if you practice like even like trial stuff, like if you're doing any type of what are they called? If you're doing any type of track stands can help, and just generally finding a balance point on a bicycle can help you on a motorcycle. It's definitely helped me. So there's something that translates really well to motorcycles, and that's going over obstacles. Now you saw with my bike, I can pull up on the front handlebar. There's only one handlebar that's on the front. You can pull up on the handlebar and kind of just help the bike roll over that obstacle. With a motorcycle, you can blip the throttle to take the weight off the front wheel and immediately let go of it so you don't shoot out whatever it is underneath your rear wheel. But what that does is it helps transition the weight to the rear and then helps you roll over it. On a motorcycle as well, you're going to be standing up just like on a bicycle to get over that obstacle, to let that bike also do a little bit of traveling underneath your waist. So what they did in the MSF course was they just put down a 2x4, and they were like right over it at the most 90-degree angle possible. Now that's one thing that you definitely do on both a bicycle and a motorcycle, is ride at 90 degrees or as much as 90 degrees as possible to whatever object you're going to cross over. Now I found it really easy, like super easy, to go over some of these obstacles because I knew that, and flipping the throttle wasn't too much of a big deal. You didn't even really need to do it over a 2x4. You know, it's basically nothing. But I just found some people were struggling with that for some reason, and it just seemed to translate really well from bicycling. One last thing I'd like to mention is that both will leave you broke.
If you liked the video, please click the like button and consider subscribing for more gear mods, gear reviews, and adventures.